So the simultaneous broadcast has started on YouTube. So Winston, thank you ever so much for joining us. We've had some interesting discussions over the last couple of months preparing the event. And myself and other members of Toulouse Business Exchange have enjoyed reading your book, The Digital War. So, of course, we'll be talking about some of the themes that you've raised in the book. So you're calling in from New York today. First of all, what's the weather like over there?
Yeah, it's a beautiful autumn in New York City.
Fantastic. Well, a bit overcast, but still dry here in the south of France. So first thing I'm going to do is say hi to all the different people who are joining us. So we've got the Chinese Business Club from Paris, Franco-British Chamber of Commerce and Industry from Toulouse and elsewhere in France, and also FIBA, which is a business club in Lyon, joining us. And of course, there are many other people from across the globe who've tuned in either through Zoom or through YouTube. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was one of the first issues that you discussed in the book, which was a really, really interesting story about how China had a sort of a Sputnik moment around artificial intelligence when Google's DeepMind lab developed AlphaGo, which is a program that plays the Chinese strategy game Go, and it managed to beat 3-0 in a 3-match series the world champion and world #1 ranked Go player Qi Ji. So I wonder if you could tell us about the cultural importance of that event and how that gripped the Chinese public and how the Chinese establishment woke up to the fact that artificial intelligence was going to be really important going forward.
That definitely, that was a major moment. And if you recall, right, 2016, I published my first book of this China Tech Revolution series titled China's Mobile Economy. And in 2016, all the keywords were about the smartphone, a smartphone spread, mobile payment, and mobile internet user traffic. That was the focus of the China market at that time. But 2017, we had this historical match between the match of the Go chess game, the traditional Go chess game with black and white marble chess. And it was between the AI program of DeepMind of Google on one side, and then the best human player, a Chinese kid, let's say, on the human side. And as you said, right, it was a 3-0 human loss to the machine. And when you look at that, it's full of metaphor of, tradition versus modern, or human versus machine, right? Intuition versus science,
East versus West,
right? But most kind of colorful metaphor would be like China versus the US. Yeah. So it is a digital war in that kind of sense. But it was a big shock to the Chinese internet industry because the Go chess was mostly the Asia chess, China, Korea, Japan, and for the Chinese scientists as well as the chess players, this chess is so complicated, has so many variations, more than the total number of atoms in the universe. So the belief was that the machine can never beat human in this chess, not in 100 years, something like that, right? But actually, the machine, the AI machine from Google turned out to be like getting better and better very quickly. Within a few months, right? It just beat every players in the world until that historical match 3-0, and the best human player crying after the loss, right, was the lasting image to the Chinese internet industry. So the message was clear. It's like you have to adapt to the digital technologies, otherwise you will be crushed. That was the message to the Chinese internet industry, and then the industry as well as the government reacted.
So how, obviously that was the kind of impulsion. And since then,
Yeah.
How have things moved forward in terms of government policy and strategy, and in terms of the take-up from Chinese digital companies and pioneering universities and what have you? What's happened since to help China move ahead?
Yes, yeah. So things happen very quickly in all aspects. Number one, the largest players, right? Let's say Alibaba started with e-commerce. Tencent started with gaming, but they all starting then they say we need to be a digital technology company. So Alibaba started its cloud business, which now becomes the top 3 largest cloud business in the world, right? Or let's say top 4, right? And Tencent, has gaming in its DNA, but it also got into cloud business, got into autonomous car business, even chip business these days. Yeah. And secondly, you see just new startups coming from new directions. In the past, startups mostly came from e-commerce or mobile entertainment related sectors. And now you see more and more startups coming from quote unquote hard technology sectors, like electric cars, like a cloud service, like AI, facial recognition, voice recognition, so on so forth. And the third aspect is just broad, the government reaction, right? So the government actually, maybe a coincidence, but in the summer of that 2017, a few months after this game, right, China government came up with a grand plan to be a power player in the AI. In the AI field, it suggested that China will become the quote unquote unquestionable global leader in AI by 2030. So this coming decade, we will see more of these government push to go forward.
So there's a fantastic sort of an analogy with this Sputnik moment that the US felt when the Soviets launched a satellite, and they suddenly realized they were behind the Soviet Union in terms of the space race.
Exactly.
And then we had all that whole story right through until the 1980s of the US and the Soviet Union investing in space technology to get ahead of each other. And then, of course, there was the whole sports thing, wasn't there, with ice hockey being a big rivalry between the States and Canada and the Soviet Union, which was a kind of backstory to that. So I can see how we had the sporting side of the US-Soviet conflict and the technology side. And here we've got, with China, more to do with strategic games, so Go, and also the technology, rather than space race, the technology race. So something else where there's a big sort of difference in strategy and difference in technology between the United States and China is in the consumer applications, notably around e-commerce. And obviously, the audience that we have here in Europe are very familiar with Amazon and some of the American e-commerce solutions. But I was particularly interested in what you wrote in your book about the company Pindodo, and what they were doing around consumer manufacturing consumer to manufacturing, consumer to farming e-commerce. So would you be able to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. Pindodo is a newcomer to the e-commerce scene in China, but actually it became very big very quickly. In China, just a little background, right? For e-commerce in China, earlier essentially 2 companies. One is Alibaba. It's a marketplace model. Lots of users, sellers and buyers use Alibaba's platform to transact. And another company was JD.com, which is more like China version of Amazon, because it runs the company as an online retail company, right? So it takes the inventory and sells the goods itself. So it's like an online retailer. PDD came in later, but it gained up market very quickly because it took a new angle to mobilize users, which is the social network, the WeChat. So Tencent, the owner of WeChat, is a shareholder of a big investor in Pindodo. And the WeChat, like a China's version of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp combined, right? Become a strategic partner of Pindodo. And with this tool, right, Pindodo, as the name suggests, can aggregate buyers, through the social network, and provide a discount to people that purchase in groups. So that's sort of the PDD model. Now it is super popular because for many people, right, the consumption upgrade means they can buy cheap stuff and have a lot of fun. So Pindodo become very popular in China.
So could you tell us a little bit more about the group buying and how
yes.
that's specific? Because that's something that maybe we're not used to
Yes.
in the sort of European tradition. How
Yes.
does that work in China, and what type of people are purchasing through groups?
Yeah. So the group purchase essentially is a discount purchase for a group of buyers. So the PDD setup is that anyone can start a group to ask for a discount. So for example, Ian, you can start saying, now I want to purchase a mug with a future of money event on it.
Okay.
Right? You say you want to buy it, and then they say they are gonna come up with a group of minimum, like let's say 20. So get a 20, and then the PDD platform will give you a much bigger discount than you purchase personally. Let's say 50% discount.
Yeah.
And now, interestingly, you have 24 hours to form that group, to lock in that big discount, right? And then you will mobilize your social network, say, hey, a future of event mug is a great souvenir, right? So actually, maybe you should do it right now, right?
Okay, right. Well, we could do that. Yeah.
Right?
Well,
So,
maybe I should. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and then
what type of group?
Right?
Sorry, what type of group would do that in China? Would it be a family group, or would it be people going beyond, say, someone's community, or would it be through their online community in WeChat that they would be doing it?
Oh, great question. So first they started with their own group, right? They can post the thing in WeChat, just like we post in Facebook, etc. Saying, I'm starting a group, join me, right? Now, what's more is then your immediate group people can reach out to his own group, right? To say, join this in, do me a favor, right? So it becomes more of an impulse purchase, like people had never thought about this a future money event mug, but under the social influence, right? Or just try to be a good person, to lock in the discount. So there's a lot more pressure, right, to put it together, and there's a 24-hour time limit there. Yeah. So it makes it not only impulsive, but also interesting. So it's like a game, right? So in the sense of gamification, everything, this is a way to gamify the process of purchase. Yeah.
So you're tying in people's peer groups, you're putting them under a time pressure, and you're making it kind of a gamble or a game or some fun, and everybody gets a discount at the end.
Exactly. Here the social network piece, the gamification piece, right, and the big discount piece are all important. And so to your point, this thing is super popular in low income classes, which is the majority of the Chinese population. But surprisingly, even for even for the coastal cities like Shanghai, Beijing, a lot of well-off professionals, white-collar professionals would do that too, because it's almost like a social game. So actually, the market would turn out to be much bigger than people thought, and more importantly, from a corporate to business perspective, people tend to spend more time on the Pindodo platform, than the traditional e-commerce, online retail, platforms, because it has this gamification and a social interaction components.
And could you tell us about how this platform also has an impact on manufacturers and on farmers, because they're able to have a direct contact with consumers and develop products that respond directly to consumers' desires, rather than having to go through retailers and wholesalers and what have you, and have those barriers between the producer and the consumer? I thought that was a really interesting point that you made.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because as people join in groups to purchase at a large volume, the platform realizes, this is a mechanism to aggregate consumer purchasing interests, right? So here you see from the consumer perspective, it's like a consumer to manufacturing, right? People can gather their interest, and if there's enough interest, the manufacturers will take it, right? And it's a very direct feedback from the market, and from the manufacturer side, this is a platform for D2C, right? Direct to consumers, because they can engage the interaction, with the consumers directly and getting feedbacks, and even during the manufacturing process, they can continue to seek feedback, from the consumers, and that's very important, for the manufacturing process.
Okay. So I don't know if you can hear, I've got a cat here who's coming to try and join into the event. You're going to go and leave me alone? Okay. So the other thing that was in the book that I found absolutely gripping was this story around cinema. Now, I think when we talk to consumers here in Europe, we tend to think of the United States and India, so Hollywood and Bollywood, as being the sort of leading cinema producers and the sort of world leaders in terms of not just making films but distributing them and interaction with film goers. But indeed, as you highlighted in the book, China is now using artificial intelligence, using mobile telephone technology to interact with film goers and to produce not only films that are interesting to film goers, but films that they're actually impacting themselves in terms of the scenario and what have you. So could you talk to us about that and explain just how China's now #1 in terms of the world of cinema and how that's related to their use of technology?
Oh, totally. And then just to finish upon the Pindodo thinking, right, and which is relevant to the movie story, I think the most important learning from the Pindodo process is that the digital platform can help you to understand the customers really well, right? Like in a typical online e-commerce, right? People putting order and then leave within 1 minute, but during the Pindodo process, right? It's a gamification, it's social network, and so the platform get to understand the users a lot better. And then the C2M, right, essentially cuts the middleman, passing that valuable information of the users to the final manufacturers, and that's very important in many fields. For example, like fresh fruit, that's a very timely thing, right? You need to deliver fruit very timely, and you need to sort of deliver the fruit at the right season, at the right place, to the right to consumers. So for the farmers, this is far more efficient to gather market information instead of like taking the apples and the oranges to the streets, and to the buyers, they can connect with the manufacturer directly, so they can make sure that the fresh fruit are truly coming from some real farming places, right? Which they can eventually even visit. So it's the same kind of thinking, in the context of movie business. But the movie business is even more interesting because it's not e-commerce, right? So it is a great example of China's mobile tech and the mobile payment development, transformed a very old traditional industry. In the past, right, the movie production and the movie viewers are very separate.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, very separate. The movie production companies handles everything from the beginning of the story to the finish of the production and the marketing, right? But the mobile technology changed that in China. And at the very beginning, where do you find a story? China has a very big online novel market. So people can pay 1 cent every day to read an installment of a novel. And during this process, they provide feedback. And then soon, the most popular novels will rise to the top, right? And then for the movie companies, they can go there to find stories, scripts that are already being tested by the market. Yeah. And then they can use the social network to ask social opinions, like who basic questions and fundamental questions, like who should play the main characters, who should be the director, and they can get feedback from the big social network community, and then during the production they can use crowdfunding or financial products based on future movies to do money raising, and because of the convenience of mobile payment. Every Joe can put in $1 to become a co-producer of a major movie.
So filmgoers not only can impact the scenario of the film, yes, and they can choose the star that they want to see represent the character in the film, and then they can also crowdfund the kind of film that they like. Yes. So there's a real sort of interaction between the cinema goer, the consumer, and the production company, and all in a very rapid, sort of real-time fashion. Because I think you were saying in the book that even when people are watching the film, yes, in certain cinemas, there's a possibility to interact directly using your mobile telephone. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a really interesting feature. Just highlighted how to it just highlighted that even the movies is already on the big screen. People can still express their views and feedbacks to the movie production side, right? And they still feel like they're engaged. They're not just passive viewers in the cinemas. This is something called the bullet screen. Bullet screen. It's a really drastic development because that feature started in the video gaming market. Like if you watch a video alone at home, right, you feel like you are very isolated, you are very passive. But when you have this bullet screen, right, when all the people who are watching that video real time post their comments on the screen, flying over your screen like bullets coming through your screen, you feel like you're watching a video or a game, in a social context. Yeah. Now in a cinema, obviously people are already sitting together, right? But some of the viewers feel like that's not enough. So some of the movie theaters provide a feature that the moviegoers can put their comments through smartphone and eject it to the big screen, right? So people can still say to each other, when they're watching the movie in the cinema, like, this movie sucks, right? Or
so instead of having to wait for the newspaper on the Monday, you've got an instant review of the film in front of you, peer group review with all the people around you giving a review of the film and telling people what they think of the film.
Exactly. You can put in a critical reviews there, and sometimes people do something really constructive, right? They would put a line saying, the girl sitting in front of me, it looks really cute,
Okay, so there's even like an opportunity to interact between cinema goers
precisely
via the cinema screen.
Yeah, in some way, it's not very different from an immersive team gaming experience, right? Like if you're in a esports gaming context, you are not only playing the game, but you are also interacting with the people who are playing the game with you, right? And this kind of interactive participation is the new generation viewers are looking for. cinema is just one direction, but it's across the board for every entertainment content. This participation, interactive nature is really, at the heart of the new generation viewers.
And coming back to the e-commerce side of things, I mean, obviously it's something that's developed in China, and it's I think there's a theme that's running through retail and commerce here in Europe as well, is people want something that's authentic, and people want to know where their products are coming from and have an interaction with the products. So, obviously with the cinema, it's how can I get involved with the production of the film?
Precisely.
And how can I get a film that corresponds to my requirements and needs and what have you? And with food, using blockchain, using the interaction that Pindodo enables between consumers and farmers, there's this real capacity to understand where the food has come from, have some kind of quality guarantee, and then also from farmers' point of view, understand what consumers are require in terms of quality and what they want in terms of products. So there's a whole interaction going on through this platform between consumers and producers through e-commerce, and then the same sort of thing being applied to the world of cinema as well. Yeah,
exactly. No, I think that's a very important point. I think in the cinema context, the mobile network becomes this common theme, across the whole lifetime of a movie. It starts with story picking, actor picking, marketing strategy, the bullet screen at the cinema, and then obviously the social community discussion, right? So it become a consistent theme across everything. And I think for every business, this concept is very important. It's not about move the sale online. It's about incorporating the internet, and the data flow, across the whole life journey of the product. And in the context of food, it's the same thing, right? Blockchain is used so that people can trace the food, from where it is produced to all the way, and its journey of travel all the way to the dinner table, right? And the blockchain technology has been used by Pindodo and JD.com and many other companies to trace the life journey of the food. China is famous for the Chinese cuisine, but it's also maybe the place with the most food scandal. So this is a very very important feature, in the China e-commerce food industry.
Well, in Europe too, we've had our own food scandals with things like the horse meat scandal most recently, and then there are several scandals that have gone on over years. So I can see that technology that's being developed now in China, and that exchange of information between the consumer and the producer, is something that could be extremely useful and would be, I think, much in demand here in Europe. And I think that's what's interesting about the themes that you cover in the book that we've just been talking about, is that we're coming from a situation where previously there would have just been a sort of a merchant transaction to a situation where there's a flow of information going backwards and forwards between the consumer and the producer. And then through AI, there's this possibility to analyze very, very quickly to get larger trends, and so that businesses can understand what they need to provide in terms of products and services for the consumer. Now, there's another theme that you cover in the book, which is kind of the fourth theme I think I want to talk about, which I think is really of great interest to people now. There's been an awful lot of talk in Europe and in the States about digital currency, particularly around Bitcoin, Ethereum, what have you, and people using digital currency to save and invest, and perhaps people thinking about what other applications could come from digital currency.
Yes.
And indeed, in China, the government are experimenting with a central bank digital currency, which is not a private entity, which is something that's issued by the central bank, controlled politically by the central bank.
Yes.
And that gives all sorts of potential opportunities for the central bank to perhaps guide economic policy,
Sure.
and to impact the way consumers are using money. So
Yeah,
perhaps
but
you
you know,
could talk
before
to us
we
about
get
that. I
into
think that's a really interesting subject.
definitely, yeah. But before we comment on the CBDC specific applications, right? You know, I think as a transition, or we can definitely, you know, first make this connection between the China's development of digital currency and China's and the mobile payments popularity in China. Yeah, there's a natural connection. So you could even say that the you know, China's leadership in digital currency has a lot to do with the boom of mobile payment in China. So Ian, you know, if you look at the example,
perhaps you could walk us through WeChat and how mobile payments became very, very popular in China ahead of Europe and the United States, and why there were sort of cultural specificities that made China a sort of a fertile testing ground for digital currencies and digital transactions.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, first, you know, mobile payment started with Alibaba's ECommerce. So in the early years, the Alibaba side, right, because of the e-commerce business, controls most of the market share of mobile payment. Now, what's really interesting is a big challenger came over from Tencent, you know, the social network company plus video gaming contents. And here, Tencent first used this in a fun way, you know, so people can use the Tencent Pay to move money into social network contests, so that people can play games, you know, that they can just send in money for people to compete, to grab, etc. And that process really educated the market. And these two guys, you know, Alibaba, Tencent, you know, two big guys, entered into a kind of a war of attracting users. And during this process, they spent, you know, billions of dollars in subsidies to encourage people to use mobile payment. So the result is, you know, a wide education, you know, of the 1 billion users in the China market. So the punchline is, China has this unique large market, you know, 1 billion users, one language, and unified by one culture, right? And they are all connected by the same kind of mobile payment mechanism. So, and if we look at the examples we just talked about earlier, you know, the cinema, the movie business, or the Pindodo, you know, the social e-commerce business, right? Or even the traditional like e-commerce or online retail businesses, you know, they all started with a mobile payment to provide the convenience, right, for users to buy everything everywhere. But they also go a little further because, like, for example, in the case of Alibaba, right, because of the e-commerce account, there's a leftover money there, right? So they can manage their money for the users. So they actually become an asset manager for the users, right? So during this process, they got more information, right? And for WeChat, you know, they provide the mobile payment for people's convenience as well. But then, you know, the WeChat has this social network DNA there, right? So when people purchase, you know, they will exhibit their purchases. They try to brag, right? So they generate contents, they generate social interactions, right? And in the case of a cinema, you know, it's movie business, because they got the stories from online novel. You know, people pay 1 cent every day to read the installment. So what you see is, right, the mobile payment, because it's convenience, it is being widely used in a lot of scenarios. Some of the scenarios are just not convenient for regular payment, but like 1 cent every day, right? Yeah. Or moving money in and out of asset management account online, every 5 minutes, right? You just cannot do that in a bank, right? That sort of thing. So here, like because of the convenience of the mobile payment, people can use it for everything anywhere. So here you have data location, user information, goods information. So much information. But the punchline is, right, from there, the companies can use that data to do a lot more things, right? To customize the offerings or create new offerings, et cetera, So I think to summarize, is saying like China market is very much driven by mobile payment today. For many people, they never had a credit card, and for many, they never had a banking account until they had the mobile payment thing, so they can link the money there, right? So the market, so it's a huge market, 1 billion users. United by the mobile payment, and there's a lot of data there, and there's a lot of like new businesses are created because of this convenience of digital payment, right? So from there, you can see a very natural extension for the China government to think about launching its own sovereign digital currency, and then gradually, move people into mobile payment based on digital currency.
Yeah. So the whole transition from the countryside to the city, that people did rapidly across China, moving very often from a village that perhaps didn't have a good telecommunications network, they didn't have a bank branch where they could open a bank account. So they then moved to the city, where very often they were in smaller apartments or shared accommodations, so they couldn't buy a personal computer, they didn't have somewhere to operate it, they didn't have space. So they went directly from being unbanked to using digital banking on a mobile telephone. Totally. And that enabled China to leap ahead of Europe, where we were still using legacy technologies. And then, as you're saying, opened up people's minds to the possibility of being able to do transactions digitally, got them used to it, and then created a lot of data around transactions that could then be used by technology companies and the government to analyze and understand how a digital currency might work, which leads us on to a central bank digital currency, which has some very interesting implications.
That's a great summary, Ian. That it's sort of natural, right? Since most of the e-commerce transactions are already on mobile payment, for many people, it will be for many people in China, using digital currency for these transactions will have very little adjustment in their everyday activities. They may still go into Alipay, or Tencent mobile payment app, but they can see, the digital currency in their wallet is one of the alternatives, right? So I think what I'm trying to say is, like, the government has designed the sovereign digital currency in such a way that it will be almost identical to people's user experience today with mobile payment. That's how it is designed. They try to make it, as convenient as mobile payment, and the digital currency is just the same value as the paper currency, right? And then once the money is sent from the central bank into individuals' wallet, then it becomes identical to their money in their usual banking account, right?
So if I understand correctly, with the system that they're experimenting, rather than having money lodged digitally with your own private bank, your own bank, you're actually having a direct line, a direct connection into the central bank, and you're having access to money which is yours, but which is coming directly from the central bank.
Yeah, from the user's perspective, it is direct, but from the money flow perspective, obviously there will be intermediaries, right? Yeah. So for example, if you're a teacher, if you're a school teacher, and your school has started using digital currency to pay your salaries, then the school and the related bank that handles that payment are the intermediaries.
Yep.
But it's only on the payment side. It's only on the payment side. Once the money is paid from your school, then the money in your account is just the same as the money you typically receive from a direct deposit.
Yeah. Yep. And what about some of the innovations? Because I'd read that they tested a possibility of paying people money that would have an expiry date. So you could receive some money and you'd be able to spend it for, say, the next 2 weeks, but after 2 weeks, the money would disappear. So that could be a really interesting lever for the central bank to stimulate economic growth, perhaps to respond to an economic slowdown, or perhaps even to decide that money can be spent for specific purposes. You can buy food with it, or you can go to the cinema and buy a cinema ticket or whatever. So that's quite interesting. How's that working?
Yeah, and I heard about the same thing. Obviously, China's central bank didn't say about this directly, but they talk about the so-called programmability of currency, right? So it's not hard to imagine that this you can build in this function there, right? You can build in this function there. No, maybe it's a stimulus money with a timeline to spend or expire, or maybe they just in a more moderate way. They just have a better feeling, better data on the actual spending of the stimulus checks, right? So even that information is very, very helpful.
So a deeper understanding of, once people have got money, how they're spending it, in what way.
Doing anything with it, right?
Okay. So, well, thank you very much. I mean, we're now really nearly to the end of the hour. So I'm going to open it up. We may have a couple of questions from the audience. So I'll let Alex come in with those. Personally, I'd just like to say thank you ever so much, Winston. It's been very, very interesting chatting to you again about these subjects. And then obviously I'll come back to finish up and close the event in the next sort of 10 minutes or so. So Alex, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Winston. I do have 2 questions. I'll try to squeeze in one question, and it's from Katie. So she's asking about the Pindodo company. So with the discounting, low income classes in China, what is the typical percentage discounts? That will be the first question. And for the second will be, how do intermediaries try to gain their ground back in the market when the risk being squeezed out, if at all?
Sorry. So the first one, right, for the low income guys, they really they look for any kind of discount. Just a few percentage discount from the listed price will incentivize them to form a group. So the second question.
The second question will be, actually, it was the typical, for the first one, let me go back a little bit. So what is the typical percentage? Is it 20%? Is it 50% that they get to gain, or it really depends on the...
You can say, like, in average, right? Let's say 20%. Yes.
20%, which is pretty great.
In average, right? But it's also goods dependent. And depending on how big your group is, etc. So
of course.
So it's a fun, because guys will say, let's get more and more people so we can get more discount, right? You're under that social pressure to join that transaction.
Definitely, we'll try to do that with some Teslas. Maybe it'll work out.
You should.
And the second question will be about the intermediaries. So what is their future, basically? So how do they gain the ground back, if they're gaining any, actually? Because they're being avoided at this point.
The intermediary for the group purchase?
Yeah.
No, they don't need the intermediary.
Yes. What is their future? What used to be the intermediaries? What is their future now? Because there is none. You know what? That's the question.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I think for some of the intermediaries, they will become the guide, or they will become the curator of the platforms. So some startup companies have come up since Alibaba, Pindodo, those guys become so big, like multi-$100 billion company, right? And there's so many goods listing there, and not even enough like advertisement there, right? People have to, the vendors have to buy the top slots to be visible, etc. So for a lot of brands, right, they need to get in front of people, and for lots of people, browsing the markets of Alibaba, Pindodo type of guys become so intimidating. Yeah, so a lot of the middle guys actually become the curators of the of those large platforms. They form their services to guide the user traffic.
All right, great.
That has become a new business. Yeah.
Somehow it's changing. That'll be the third question. And so it's from Faris. How do consumers identify who the true manufacturer is? And are they commonly known, or is it crucial and time-consuming aspect of the process?
Yeah, the process can be quite transparent. The users can talk to the manufacturers directly, during the process.
Okay.
Yeah, in some way, if you think about it, it's not that different from a crowdfunding, like crowdfunding for products, right? But some manufacturers, when they try to launch a new products, they would do a crowdfunding not only for financing but also for the market information, like are there market interest for this new product, right? And this group of purchase thing, in some way is very similar to the crowdfunding for new products.
All right. My last question will be actually from me, because I'm from Africa, and I'll just have to ask you, what are the lessons that the continent of Africa should learn from China, and what they're doing at the moment in terms of CDBCs or other?
Yeah. No, I think the mobile payment has become a big revolution in China, especially to the remote regions in China. When mobile payment was launched, right, the adoption rate, the percentage of mobile payment as of total e-commerce purchases, right, that adoption rate is highest in Tibet, like in the most remote province of China, because Tibet has very little existing infrastructure, and they don't even have a lot of roads, like transportation, etc. Right, and people buy a lot of things online. You don't see established shopping malls, etc. Over there, right? So people buy a lot of things online, and they do this when they move around in that vast province, so in the end, they like at the first couple of years and until today, Tibet has been the #1 mobile payment adoption province. Like almost 100% of e-commerce is done on mobile phone and mobile payment. And I think the lesson here is very valuable. Like for countries, for regions without much existing infrastructure, mobile payment is a great tool, for the spread of e-commerce.
All right. And what should be the lessons for the EU now? Because obviously, if you compare with China, the Western world is kind of better, has better infrastructure, but still they're lacking in certain ways. What would be the lessons?
Jokingly, I would say, if they can come up with a uniform language, that would be very helpful. Yeah. But like it's only half joking, right? But when you look at the Chinese internet market, the reason that it can expand so quickly, like a Uber, when they got into China, a few years after it was set up in California, actually in several of the cities in China, it got expanded even more quickly than Uber in the US, right?
Yeah.
So, when you look at this, part of the reason obviously is the urbanization, right? That EU has, but another part is just this uniform system, right? As I mentioned, right, you were talking about 1 billion users, unified by the same language and the same mobile payment, right? And then it becomes a huge foundation for any business to expand, at a rapid growth rate.
All right, that will be great. So we're going to thank you for your time because you have to go, but thank you very much for answering those questions. Yes. And Ian, back to you.
Yeah, Winston, thanks ever so much for joining us. It's been really fascinating talking to you. So I'll just remind everybody that your book is available through all good bookshops and online stores now. It's called The Digital War, published by Wiley. I've just put my email address into the chat. So if anybody wants to send me an email through, I can actually pass your details directly onto the publisher so that they can send you information about the book. Again, the subject matter really fascinating, and I know it's something that's very useful to a lot of us in terms of our businesses, people who are trading with China, people who are using e-commerce and what have you to help develop their own businesses. So yeah, it's been great. And thank you ever so much to everybody who's joined us, especially from Chinese Business Club in Paris, from Franco-British Chamber of Commerce in Toulouse and elsewhere, and FIBA in Lyon. Looking forward to the next event. We will announce it in due course on our LinkedIn group. Do link up with Winston, myself, Alex on LinkedIn. And for those of you in Toulouse, there'll be a face-to-face event next week on the 7th of October. More information on our meetup group. Thanks ever so much. Take care. Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ian.